Kira, after 15 years with Tech Vantage, we're restructuring your position. Marjorie Thompson announced, her voice carrying a barely concealed note of satisfaction. She sat across from me in the small conference room flanked by Denise from HR, both of them wearing carefully crafted expressions of corporate regret. The company is moving in a new direction. Denise added, sliding a manila folder across the table. Your contributions have been valuable, but we're consolidating the research division under the product development team. I nodded thoughtfully, accepting the folder without opening it. Inside would be the standard severance package, 2 weeks for every year of service, continued health coverage for 3 months, and a list of career counseling resources I would never use. I completely understand, I replied, my voice steady. These decisions are never easy. Relief flashed across their faces. They'd clearly expected tears, protests, or anger. After all, I was a 55-year-old woman being pushed out of the industry where youth was prized above experience. What they didn't know was that I had anticipated this moment for weeks, ever since a misdirected email thread had appeared in my inbox last month. We'd like you to clean out your desk by Friday, Marjorie continued, gaining confidence from my apparent acceptance. We'll need your keycard, company laptop, and phone before you leave. Your team will be notified this afternoon. My team, 6 brilliant engineers I had personally recruited and mentored over the years, the same team that had helped me develop the distributed processing algorithm that now powers Vantage's flagship product account, Sphere accounting software used by over 40% of Fortune 500 companies. Of course, I said, rising from my chair. Is there anything else? They exchanged glances, clearly thrown by my composure. Marjorie recovered first. That's all for now. Thank you for making this professional. As I walked back to my office, I passed the glass-walled conference room where the executive team was meeting. Through the transparent barrier, I could see CEO Victor Lawson gesturing animatedly at a PowerPoint presentation titled Q3 Revenue Projections. The same Victor Lawson who had taken credit for my algorithm at last year's industry conference, referring to me only as one of our research team members. I closed my office door and pulled out my personal phone, sending a single text message. It's happening. Friday is my last day. The response came immediately. Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize details. I smiled as I looked at the calendar on my desk. Today was Wednesday. Friday, I would leave Tech Vantage for the last time, and Monday would be fascinating. That evening, I met Gregory Sullivan at Meridian, an upscale restaurant far from Tech Vantage's headquarters. As the CEO of Precision Systems, Tech Vantage's largest competitor, Greg knew the value of discretion. He'd reserved a private dining alcove in the back, shielded from curious eyes by elegant Japanese screens. They actually did it, Greg said, shaking his head. After we ordered, I suspected they might, but to cut the very person who developed their or technology. Victor never understood what I actually created, I replied, sipping my water. He saw the implementation, the user interface, the marketing potential, but the underlying architecture, that was just text stuff to him. The irony was almost too perfect. 3 months ago, I discovered the patent application for my distributed processing algorithm had never been filed by Tech Vantage's legal team, and oversight, they'd claimed. When I inquired, they'd assured me they'd handle it immediately, but something about their response had seemed off, prompting me to check the company's internal documentation. That's when I found it, a strategy memo outlining plans to claim the algorithm as company developed technology without specific inventor attribution. They'd planned to push me out before securing the patent, knowing intellectual property developed by employees typically belonged to the company. What Tech Vantage didn't know was that I'd already been working on refinements to the algorithm on my own time, using my personal equipment. Those improvements, which dramatically increased processing efficiency by 43%, weren't covered by my implement agreement. I'd quietly filed for a patent under my own name last month, fully documented with timestamps and development logs that clearly showed the work was completed outside of company time. The patent had been granted with remarkable speed thanks to Greg's introduction to a top-tier IP attorney. All the paperwork is finalized, Greg said, now sliding a folder across the table. As soon as you sign, Precision Systems officially acquires exclusive licensing rights to your patent. The press release goes out Monday morning, announcing you as our new Chief Innovation Officer. I reviewed the documents carefully, though I'd already memorized The key terms: a seven-figure signing, bonus, substantial equity and precision, systems and ongoing royalties from all products using my algorithm. What do you think Victor's face will look like when he realizes what's happened? Greg asked, unable to hide his satisfaction at the prospect. I'm more concerned about my team. I admitted they don't deserve to be caught in the fallout. Greg nodded. Already addressed. We have positions for all 6 of them if they're interested. Senior roles with significant raises. I signed the final page and closed the folder in one elegant move. I had secured my future, protected my team, and ignition for my work to new beginnings, Greg said, raising his glass. And to owning your own value, I added, clinking my glass against. His Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of exit interviews, knowledge transfer, meetings, and saying goodbye to colleagues. I maintained my professional composure throughout, even as rumors spread across the company. Administrative assistants gave me sympathetic glances in the hallways. Junior developers approach, awkwardly asking if I'd provide LinkedIn recommendations before I documented everything meticulously. Every project, every password, every process, knowing full well that Tech Vantage would soon discover just how thorough they needed me to be. My decision to leave comprehensive transition notes wasn't kindness. It was evidence that I had acted in good faith while the company had not. During my final exit interview on Friday afternoon, Denise from HR went through the standard checklist with mechanical efficiency. You understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the property of Tech Vantage, she stated, pushing a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, I replied pleasantly. Anything developed within the scope of my employment using company resources. During company time, I emphasized those qualifiers slightly, but Denise was too busy checking boxes to notice. And you affirm you have no copies of proprietary company information. I have taken nothing that belongs to Tech Vantage, I confirmed. Truthfully, the patent was mine after all. As I packed the personal items from my desk, family photos, a collection of conference badges marking 15 years of industry events, the coffee mug my team had given me last Christmas, Marjorie stopped by, leaning against my doorframe with artificial casualness. I just wanted to check that everything's clear for your departure, she said, watching me place items into a cardboard box. Crystal clear, I replied, wrapping a small award I'd received for the very algorithm now at the center of my plans. The irony wasn't lost on me as I carefully placed it between layers of tissue paper. You know, Kira, these restructuring decisions are never personal, Marjorie continued. Victor feels the company needs to move in a more youthful direction. I looked up, meeting her gaze directly. I understand completely. Business is business. Something in my tone made her pause for a brief moment. Uncertainty flickered across her face, but she quickly dismissed it. What could a soon to be unemployed 55-year-old woman possibly do? Will you be taking some time off? She asked, an artificial note of concern in her voice. Actually, I already have something lined up, I replied. Start Monday. Oh, surprise crossed her features. That's fast. Anything interesting? I smiled. Very a leadership position. I'm quite excited about it. She nodded absently, already mentally moving onto other matters. Well, good luck with that. As I walked out of Tech Vantage's glass headquarters for the final time, keycard surrendered and belongings in tow, I took a moment to look back at the building I'd spent 15 years of my career. On the top floor, I could the executive conference room lit up for an evening meeting, likely discussing how to redistribute my responsibilities among younger, less experienced, and significantly less expensive staff. Little did they know that in less than 72 hours, that same room would be hosting an emergency crisis meeting. Instead, Monday morning dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in my new charcoal suit, a power outfit I'd purchased specifically for this day. The Precision Systems town car arrived precisely at 7:30 a.m. to take me to their headquarters, where I'd start my first day as Chief Innovation Officer. The press release went live at 7 a.m. Greg informed me as I settled into my new corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. Industry newsletters are already picking it up. I've got the communications team monitoring reactions. The announcement had been crafted with strategic precision. Precision Systems acquired exclusive rights to revolutionary processing. Algorithm welcomes creator Dr. Kira Jennings as Chief Innovation Officer. It detailed my background, emphasized my role as the sole inventor of the patented technology, and outlined how Precision Systems would be integrating the algorithm into their next generation of products. Most importantly, it clearly stated that any company currently using the technology would need to negotiate licensing agreements with Precision Systems moving forward at precisely 9:15 a.m. My phone lit up with the first text from my former team at TechVantage. Complete chaos here. What did you do? It was from Miguel, my lead developer. I smiled, typing back, check your personal email. All 6 of you have offers. Waiting meanwhile 8 miles away at TechVantage headquarters, the scheduled Monday morning executive meeting was undergoing a dramatic transformation according to Miguel's play-by-play updates throughout the morning. Victor had arrived at the office to find the company's general counsel and chief financial officer waiting at his door. Both Ash and Fade the Industry announcement had hit their inboxes, simultaneously setting off immediate alarms by 9:30 a.m. What should have been a routine start of week meeting had morphed into an emergency crisis session. Board members were calling in remotely. The legal team was frantically reviewing my employment contract and the documentation around the algorithms development. They're pulling every file with your name on it, Miguel reported. Someone just wheeled in all the servers from the research division for the tech team to analyze. I could picture the scene perfectly. Victor pacing the conference room demanding explanations from Marjorie and the legal department. The stock would already be responding to the news investors hated. Uncertainty, and the announcement had created plenty of it. At 10:45 a.m. Received an email from Victor himself, the desperation practically emanating from my screen. Kira, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss. I forwarded it to Precision Systems legal team without responding. By noon, the industry was buzzing with speculation. TechVantage's stock had dropped 7% since the market opened, while Precision Systems had seen a 12% increase. 3 different technology journals had requested interviews with me about the strategic coup that had shaken the accounting software industry. How are you feeling? Greg asked, stopping by my office as I settled in. Validated, I replied honestly. 15 years of watching others take credit for my work, of being told I should be grateful just to have a seat at the table, and now, finally, recognition. My new executive assistant appeared at the door. Dr. Jennings, the development team is ready for you in the main conference room, and she hesitated. TechVantage's CEO has called 4 times in the last hour. Please let him know I'm in meetings all day, I replied calmly. I'll have our legal team reach to discuss licensing options later this week. As I walked toward my first meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, my phone buzzed with another update from Miguel. Board just called emergency session. Victor looks like he's about to explode. P.S. My team and I accept your offer. When can we start? By Tuesday morning. The full impact of my departure had become clear to everyone at TechVantage. Their flagship product account Sphere relied entirely on my algorithm to process the massive data sets that gave it an edge over competitors without licensing rights to my patent. They faced 2 equally unpalatable options: negotiate with Precision Systems or rebuild their core technology from scratch, a process that would take years and millions in development costs. Victor has called an all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. Miguel texted it was his last day at TechVantage. He and the rest of my former team would be starting at Systems next Monday. Rumor is they're going to try to sue you. I forwarded his message to our legal department, who responded almost immediately. Let them try. Your documentation is impeccable. Development logs, timestamps, personal equipment usage, all clearly established. We've prepared for this scenario. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new role with remarkable ease. The respect I received at Precision Systems was a stark contrast to my final years at TechVantage. When I spoke in meetings, people actually listened. My ideas weren't repackaged by male colleagues and presented as their own. My age and experience were viewed as assets rather than life abilities. The engineering team is implementing your efficiency improvements. Greg informed me during our afternoon briefing. Early testing shows a 51% performance boost, even better than we projected. I had several refinements, never shared with TechVantage. Why? Admitted after I discovered they were planning to eliminate my position. I saw no reason to give them my best work. Their loss, our gain, Greg replied with a satisfied smile. Speaking of which, the first licensing inquiry came in this morning, not from TechVantage yet. They're still in denial, but from Data Flow Systems, they're worried about being caught in the crossfire. At 3:30 p.m., Miguel sent a detailed account of Victor's all hands. Meeting the CEO had tried to project confidence, assuring the staff that Tech Vantage would vigorously defend our proprietary technology, but the anxiety in the room had been palpable. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles, sensing the company's vulnerability. Marjorie looked like she was about to faint when someone asked directly if they'd failed to secure the patent. Miguel reported Victor cut the question period short after that. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified. Two major clients had contacted Precision Systems about switching from account sphere, concerned about Tech Vantage's ability to maintain the product without the album's creator. Our stock had risen another 8%, while Tech Vantage's continued its decline. I received a call from Denise in HR, the same woman who had slid my severance package across the table just days earlier. Kira, she began, her voice carefully professional. I'm calling to discuss the situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding about ownership rights. I don't think there's any misunderstanding, I replied calmly. Employment agreement clearly states that intellectual property developed on my own time using my own resources remains mine. The patent documentation confirms exactly that. Victor was hoping you might consider coming in to discuss options. Any discussions would need to go through Precision Systems legal department. Now I responded, or they'd be happy to set up a meeting to discuss licensing terms. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finn, finally. Denise sighed. I'll pass that. Along that afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to Precision Systems Board of Directors, outlining our technology roadmap with my algorithm at its center. As I stood confidently at the head of the table, not hidden in the back, as I had been at Tech Vantage, I caught Greg's approving nod. By Friday, just 1 week after I had walked out of Tech Vantage for the last time, the company had entered full crisis mode. Their stock had fallen 23% from Monday's opening bell, triggering concerned calls from major investors. Industry analysts were publishing speculative pieces with titles like "Can Tech Vantage Survive the Algorithm Crisis?" and "How One Strategic Blunder May Cost a Tech Giant Everything." Through my industry contacts, I learned that Victor had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation to the board. Tech Vantage would need to either license my algorithm them from Precision Systems, likely at exorbitant rates that would devastate their profit margins, or undertake a complete rebuild of account sphere without using any technology covered by my patent. They've started interviewing for a new development team, Miguel informed me during our Friday video call, where we discussed his upcoming transition to Precision Systems. Victor's claiming they can recreate the functionality in 6 months. I couldn't help but laugh. The original algorithm took me 3 years to perfect, and that was with intimate knowledge of the problem space. Exactly, Miguel agreed. Nobody's believing the timeline, especially after your team posted their resignation letter simultaneously. The knowledge drain is massive. That afternoon, Tech Vantage's attorneys finally reached to Precision Systems to open a dialogue about potential licensing arrangements. Our legal team, following the strategy we had developed, responded with terms that were technically fair but strategically painful. 3 times the standard industry licensing rate, plus a public acknowledgement of my role as the technology inventor. They'll balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost, Greg predicted as we reviewed the response in his office. Victor's ego won't allow him to admit he pushed out the person who created their core technology. Then they'll have to rebuild, I replied, and every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we extend our lead in the market. The following Monday morning, 10 days after my unceremonious dismissal, I led the first meeting with my newly assembled innovation team, which included Miguel and the other 5 engineers from Tech Vantage. The energy in the room was electric as we mapped out the next evolution of my algorithm. This is how development meetings should be commented. Anita, one of my former team members at Tech Vantage, we spent half our time explaining basic concepts to executives who wouldn't listen. Anyway, that's the difference between being valued and being seen as replaceable, I replied. Here, your expertise is recognized. As we wrapped the productive session, my assistant appeared at the door. Dr. Jennings, there's been a significant development with Tech Vantage. Their board just announced an emergency leadership change. Victor Lawson is stepping down effective. Immediately, the news spread quickly. Within hours, industry publications were reporting that Tech Vantage's board had lost confidence in Victor's leadership following the patent oversight that threatened the company's flagship product. Marjorie Thompson was also out, along with the head of legal, had failed to properly secure the patent That evening, I received an unexpected email from Richard Donovan, Vantage's newly appointed interim CEO. Unlike Victor's desperate message from the previous week, this was straightforward and respectful. Dr. Jennings, congratulations on your new position. I've been brought in to help Tech Vantage navigate the current situation. I'd like to discuss a fair licensing arrangement for your patented technology. We're prepared to acknowledge your contributions publicly and make appropriate amends for the oversights of previous management. We be available to meet next week. I forwarded the email to Greg, adding a simple note, Phase 1, complete. His reply came quickly. Beautifully executed. The board is celebrating your first major victory for Precision Systems. Looks like Tech Vantage is finally learning an expensive lesson about valuing innovation and innovators. 3 months after my departure from Tech Vantage, I sat on the stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference preparing to deliver the keynote address. The audience was filled with industry leaders, technology, journalists, and aspiring developers, many of whom now knew my story. And now I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, the conference organizer, announced Dr. Kira Jennings, Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and creator of the distributed processing algorithm that has revolutionized data handling across multiple industries. The applause was substantial. As I approached the podium, a difference a few months could make last year. I had attended this same conference as part of the Tech Vantage delegation, seated in the back while Victor gave a presentation about his innovations. Thank you. I began surveying the attentive faces. Today I want to talk about innovation ownership and the importance of properly valuing intellectual contributions regardless of where they come from. My presentation detailed the technical aspects of my algorithm, but also touched on the broader issues of recognition and respect in the technology sector without mentioning Tech Vantage. I emphasized the importance of companies protecting their innovators rather than seeing them as replaceable resources. Afterward, during the reception, several young women engineers approached me seeking advice and mentorship. One of them, barely 30, confided, "Your story changed how I document my work." I started keeping detailed logs of my development process on personal time. "Smart," I replied. "Your innovations deserve protection." As the evening concluded, checked my phone to find an entry. News alert: Tech Vantage had finally announced the licensing agreement with Precision Systems, acknowledging me by name as the algorithm's creator. Their stock had stabilized at a significantly lower valuation than before my departure 1 year to the day after. Being told to clean out my desk, I sat in my spacious office at Precision Systems, reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, the company had released 3 groundbreaking products built on my algorithm, capturing significant market share from Tech Vantage and other competitors. A knock at my door interrupted my analysis. It was Greg, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Happy anniversary," he said, setting the glasses on my desk. "The board asked me to share the news with you personally before the public announcement. Precision Systems has officially surpassed Tech Vantage in market valuation for the first time in company history." I smiled, feeling not triumph but a quiet satisfaction. That's what happens when you value innovation properly. As Greg poured the champagne, my assistant delivered a sleek envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at Women in Technology's annual leadership summit. The topic: owning your intellectual value, how proper documentation changed an industry. You've become something of an icon, you know, Greg commented, noticing the invitation. The story about the executive who didn't recognize what she had until it was gone has become a cautionary tale. In corporate boardrooms, Richard Donovan, who had remained as Tech Vantage's CEO after the crisis, had implemented sweeping changes in how the company recognized and rewarded innovation. Their new policies on intellectual property protection and inventor recognition were reportedly modeled after the program had established at Precision Systems. It was never about revenge, said, raising my glass in a toast. It was about recognition, about showing the industry that innovation isn't anonymous. It comes from real people who deserve real credit to proper recognition. Greg agreed, clinking his glass against mine as the afternoon sun streamed through my office windows. I reflected on my journey at 56. I had finally found what had eluded me throughout my career: not just success, but acknowledgement. My name was now permanently attached to the algorithm that had changed an industry exactly where it belonged.
A man changes his Wi-Fi password and his neighbor calls 911 on him. But when the cops arrive, they uncover something far more disturbing. Ken Elm wasn't the kind of man who liked unnecessary attention. He worked from home, kept his yard neat, and only ever spoke to his neighbours when necessary. For the most part, people left him alone, which was exactly how he liked it. That was until one simple decision put him under a microscope. It all started on a Thursday afternoon in Crestwood, Missouri. Amory had just wrapped up a long morning of work and decided to take a break by checking his internet speed. Lately, his Wi-Fi had been acting up, slower than usual, buffering on video calls, lagging when he streamed music. At first, he thought it was just his provider being unreliable, but something didn't sit right with him, so he dug a little deeper. Opening up his router settings on his phone, he noticed a device connected to his network that he didn't recognize. The name wasn't just random numbers and letters. It looked like someone had intentionally labeled it Crestwood IO1. That was weird. Amory lived alone. He didn't have multiple devices connected to his Wi-Fi beyond his phone, laptop, and TV. He wasn't the type to lend out his password either, so who was using his internet? Annoyed, he decided to kick every unknown device off the network and reset his password. He stepped outside for a stronger signal, leaning against the side of his house while typing in the new credentials. And that's when Audrey saw him. From her kitchen window, she spotted Amory standing in his driveway, staring at his phone, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. To her, it looked suspicious. She had never trusted him, not for any real reason, but because he never seemed interested in being part of the neighborhood. He didn't come to block parties, he barely spoke to anyone, and now here he was, standing outside, messing with something on his phone. Ew. Her mind jumped to the worst conclusion. He was hacking. She didn't know what or why, but she felt it in her gut. Something wasn't right. Before she could talk herself out of it, she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Yes, I need to report something suspicious. My neighbor, he's outside doing something with his phone. I don't know what it is, but it looks off. Can you send someone to check it out? The dispatcher asked a few questions, but Melanie didn't have real answers. She just kept repeating the same thing. He's up to something. I just know it. The police were on their way. And Amory, he had no idea his quiet afternoon was about to turn into a full-blown investigation. But what neither of them knew was that the real danger had nothing to do with Amory at all. Amory had just finished updating his Wi-Fi password when he heard the sirens. At first, he barely paid attention. Maybe they were headed somewhere else. But then he saw the squad car slow down and stop right in front of his house. 2 officers stepped out. One was a tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp features, Detective Luis Navarro. His partner, Officer Belle Carter, had a more compact frame but carried herself with a quiet authority. Amory let out a slow breath. Here we go. He didn't move from his spot as the officers approached. Navarro's hand rested near his belt, not on his gun, but close enough to send a message. Sir, Navarro called out, voice steady, we got a call about some suspicious activity. Mind telling us what you're doing? Amory frowned, glancing between the officers. Suspicious activity? He was standing in his own driveway. I'm changing my Wi-Fi password. His tone carried a hint of confusion, but he kept his voice calm. He knew how these things could escalate. Navarro exchanged a quick glance with Carter before looking back at Amory. Do you live here? Amory almost laughed. What kind of question was that? His car was in the driveway. His name was on the mailbox. Yeah, he said, crossing his arms. I've lived here for 3 years. Before Navarro could respond, a voice cut through the air. He's lying! Amory turned, and there she was. Audrey, standing on her porch, arms folded, watching everything like she was the neighborhood security guard. He's always outside doing something, she continued. Messing with his phone, looking around like he's watching people. Now he's out here standing in the same spot for 10 minutes, just tapping away. Amory couldn't believe it. Was she serious? I was on my router settings, he said flatly, because someone I don't know has been using my Wi-Fi. Melanie scoffed. Oh, sure, and I'm supposed to believe that. Navarro turned to her. Ma'am, do you have any evidence that Mr. Coleman has done something illegal? Melanie hesitated because, of course, she didn't. She just had a bad feeling. I don't know, she admitted. I just think you should check. Navarro exhaled, his patience thinning. He turned back to Amory. Sir, would you mind if we take a quick look at your router settings just to clear this up? Amory clenched his jaw. He shouldn't have to prove anything, but he also knew how these situations could spiral out of control. Fine, he muttered, unlocking his phone and pulling up the settings. Here, take a look. Navarro leaned in, eyes scanning the list of connected devices, and that's when his expression changed. Because there it was, Crestwood ISO 1. Who owns that device? Navarro asked. Amory shook his head. Not me. Officer Carter stepped in, eyebrows raised. So someone's been using your Wi-Fi without permission? Amory nodded. And I don't think they were just stealing internet. Look at the connection logs. It's been running non-stop. Someone's been watching. Navarro's posture shifted. This wasn't just a petty neighbor dispute anymore. Melanie, still standing on her porch, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Wait, what do you mean, watching? Amory turned to her, eyes cold. I mean, someone has been spying, and they might be watching all of us. But the real question was, who? Silence settled over the front yard. The weight of Amory's words hung in the air. Melanie, who had been so sure she was the one in the right, suddenly looked uneasy. Spying? That wasn't what she expected to hear. Navarro straightened up. All right, he said, his voice more serious now. Let's get inside. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. Amory didn't argue. He led the officers into his house, his frustration simmering just below the surface. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet here he was, being treated like a suspect in his own home. Melanie hesitated before following. She wasn't sure why, but something told her she needed to hear this. Once inside, Amory placed his phone on the dining table and mirrored the router settings onto his laptop screen. The device list appeared. There it was again, Crestwood ISO 1, still connected, still active. Officer Carter leaned in, scanning the details. Can you see what kind of device this is? Amory clicked around, his fingers moving fast. I can't tell exactly, but he opened the activity logs and froze. Navarro noticed the shift in his face. What is it? Amory's throat went dry. It's been accessing camera feeds. The room went dead quiet. Melanie blinked. I don't understand. What camera feeds? Amory's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Mine. He turned the laptop around. My home security cameras. Someone's been logging in and watching my live feeds. Carter's expression tightened. You're saying someone has been spying on you through your own security system? Amory exhaled sharply. That's exactly what I'm saying. But then his stomach dropped. Because the more he scrolled, the more he realized it wasn't just his cameras. His system had flagged multiple IP addresses. Some of them belonged to his network, but others, different homes. Oh, this is bad, Amory murmured. Navarro leaned closer. What do you mean? Amory tapped the screen. Whoever this is, they're not just watching me. They're watching other people in the neighborhood. Melanie took a step back, shaking her head. No, that can't be right. Amory turned to her. You sure about that? He clicked another log. A new feed opened. A dimly lit hallway appeared, then a living room, then a bedroom. Melanie gasped. Wait, that's... Amory didn't even have to ask. He recognized it immediately. It was her house. She stumbled backward, pressing a hand to her mouth. Navarro's voice was sharp. How the hell is this happening? Amory gritted his teeth. If I had to guess, someone in the neighborhood set up a fake network, a Wi-Fi signal that looks like a normal connection. People unknowingly connect to it, and once they do, their devices get compromised. Carter's face darkened. You mean a man-in-the-middle attack? Amory nodded. Exactly. Melanie's voice shook. So you're saying someone's been, what? Watching me? My family? Amory's eyes didn't leave hers. That's exactly what I'm saying. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. Oh my God. Navarro's jaw tightened. All right, We need to figure out who's behind this, and fast. But what none of them knew was that the person responsible was a lot closer than they thought. Detective Navarro wasted no time. He pulled out his radio and called in for cybercrime support. "This is bigger than we thought," he muttered to Officer Carter. "If someone's running a surveillance network, they're not just invading privacy, they're committing a felony." Carter nodded, her expression serious. "And if we don't stop them now, who knows how far they've already gone?" Amory, still seated at his laptop, was already digging deeper. He wasn't a hacker, but he knew enough about network security to trace where the data was being sent. He opened the IP logs and froze. "Wait, this can't be right." Navarro looked up. "What?" Amory turned the laptop screen so they could see. "The data isn't going to some random server. It's being sent to an address, right here in the neighborhood." Melanie's eyes widened. "You mean someone close by is behind this?" Amory nodded. "It's coming from a house just a few doors down." Navarro's expression darkened. "Can you pinpoint exactly which one?" Amory worked fast, cross-referencing connection timestamps with signal strength. Within minutes, he had a match. His stomach dropped. He recognized the address. Melanie did too. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "That's—" Amory cut her off, his voice cold. "That's Brandon's house." Brandon Foster, Melanie's own nephew, a 22-year-old college student who had moved in with her a few months ago. He was quiet, always on his computer, barely socialized. Now, suddenly, things were making a whole lot of sense. Melanie's face went pale. No, that doesn't make any sense. Brandon he wouldn't." Carter stepped in. "We need to talk to him, now." Melanie hesitated. She didn't want to believe it, but deep down, something in her gut told her it was true. "I'll take you to him," she murmured. Amory stood. "I'm coming too." Navarro gave him a sharp look. "No, you stay here. Let us handle this." Amory clenched his jaw. He hated sitting back when he was the one who uncovered everything, but he also knew pushing back wouldn't help. "Fine," he muttered. Olke muttered. "But you'd better get the truth out of him." But the truth? It was even worse than they imagined. "Brandon, can you come downstairs for a minute?" No answer. Navarro exchanged a look with Carter before stepping inside. "We're going up." Melanie didn't argue. She just wrapped her arms around herself, her breath unsteady. They climbed the stairs, reaching Brandon's bedroom door. It was shut. No sounds inside. Navarro knocked hard. "Brandon, this is the police. We need to talk." Still nothing. Then the sound of movement. A chair scraping. Footsteps. Carter's hand hovered over her gun. "Open the door. Now." Slowly, the knob turned. The door creaked open, revealing Brandon Foster. He looked startled, nervous, eyes darting between Navarro, Carter, and his aunt. His hands fidgeted at his sides. "What's going on?" he asked, voice tight. Navarro studied him. "We have reason to believe you've been accessing private security cameras in the neighborhood. You want to explain that?" Brandon's face barely flinched, but his fingers curled slightly, like he was gripping something invisible. "What? That's crazy," he scoffed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Carter wasn't buying it. "Mind if we check your laptop?" His jaw tightened. "You don't have a warrant." Navarro stepped closer. "Brandon, we can get one, but right now we're giving you a chance to tell us the truth before this gets worse." A long, tense beat. Then Brandon exhaled. "Look, He ran a hand through his hair. "I wasn't doing anything illegal, okay? Navarro cut him off. "Then why is your IP address linked to a network breach involving multiple homes?" Brandon froze. Melanie's voice broke. "Brandon, please tell me you're not involved in this." His eyes darted to her, and for the first time, his mask cracked. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," he muttered. "It started as a joke. I wanted to see if I could get into someone's Wi-Fi just to mess with them." Navarro's voice was sharp. "So you admit you hacked into the network?" Brandon hesitated, then he nodded. Melanie's breath caught in her throat. Brandon kept going, voice faster now. It was just supposed to be a prank, but then I saw the security cameras and I got curious. Carter's eyes narrowed. Curious or obsessed? Brandon didn't answer. Navarro's patience ran out. How many people have you watched? Silence. Then his voice dropped. I don't know. Melanie staggered back. Oh my God! Brandon looked at her. For the first time, real regret crossed his face. I swear I wasn't hurting anyone, he said. Navarro didn't let him finish. Brandon Foster, you're under arrest for unauthorized access of a computer network and unlawful surveillance. Brandon went pale. Wait, no. Carter was already pulling out her cuffs. Melanie turned away, covering her face as tears welled in her eyes. Amory had been right all along, and the worst part? She had called the cops on him when the real danger had been inside her house the whole time. But this wasn't over yet. Brandon didn't resist. He stood there, wrists bound in cuffs, staring at the floor as Navarro read him his rights. It was over. Melanie's breath was shaky. She couldn't even look at him. This was her nephew, the boy she had taken in, fed, supported, and he had been violating the privacy of their entire neighborhood. Navarro guided Brandon toward the door, but before stepping out, he turned to Amory, who had been watching from the sidewalk. You were right, Navarro admitted. If you hadn't caught this, we might have never known. Amory didn't say anything at first. He just let out a slow breath, looking between Brandon and Melanie. Then, finally, he spoke. You know what's crazy? His voice was calm, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. I was out here minding my business, changing my own Wi-Fi password, and yet somehow I was the one who got the cops called on me. Melanie flinched. She had no defense, because there was none. I was wrong, she murmured. I made an assumption, and it was completely unfair. Amory let that sit in the air for a moment, then, shaking his head, he turned toward his house. I don't need an apology, he said over his shoulder. Just do better. And with that, he went inside. Navarro and Carter exchanged a look before leading Brandon toward the patrol car. Melanie stayed behind, standing alone in the middle of the street. The truth had been right in front of her all along, but she had been too busy looking at the wrong person. And that mistake, it would haunt her for a long, long, long time. Assumptions have consequences. Jumping to conclusions based on bias or paranoia can ruin innocent people's lives, while the real danger goes unchecked. Instead of making judgments without evidence, take a step back. Observe, listen. The truth might not be what you expect. If you found this story eye-opening, share it. You never know who needs to hear this lesson today.